As World War II progressed, it could not be denied that everyone's destroyers were getting a lot bigger, and the older Swedish type of design of just over 1,000 tons, which had been a little small even by pre-war standards, was now entirely unsuitable as a credible deterrent. So it was time for a major size upgrade, and thus work began on a new design which was intended to be paired with the Tre Krona class cruisers, who would then act as flotilla leaders, in much the same way as other navies used large destroyers or small cruisers to lead destroyer flotillas in their navies. The plan was to have a class of 4 ships, and although much larger than the preceding Visby class, they still only displaced just under 1,900 tons standard. This would have made them considerable ships at the start of World War II, but as the conflict ended, the modern destroyers of the US and Royal Navies still had 800 to 1,000 tons more displacement on them than this design. The benefit of this, however, was that the Swedish ships would still be able to go where newer Soviet or Western ships could not, both in terms of shallow water and in terms of the cunningly placed under-mountain naval bases that the Swedes were digging. The main battery increased by only 1 gun to 4 120mm or 4.7-inch guns, but the lethality jump that this represented was far greater than it appeared. The new weapons were dual-purpose automatic guns capable of far higher rates of fire than the older guns used in previous classes. These were mounted in a pair of twin turrets, one fore and one aft. Supplementing this was an impressive light and medium anti-aircraft battery consisting of no less than 6 or 7 40mm Bofors cannon and another 8 20mm cannon. All of the ship's guns, of course, were supplied by Bofors. The 40mm were mounted in 3 twin and 1 single mounts, with 1 twin superfiring over the forward 120mm mount and the other 2 twins on the centerline aft of the funnel, with the final single gun mounted right up on the tip of the bow on the second ship in the class, the Öland, a feature that was later retrofitted onto the class leader, the Öland. The 20mm guns were distributed evenly down either side. 2 triple torpedo tubes, a series of depth charge throwers and rails for 60 mines, completed the armament. Both the mines and any stern-dropped depth charges were stored below deck and exited out of chutes with doors in the transom stern. Speed was only 35 knots compared to the 39 of previous classes, despite almost 9,000 more shaft horsepower, for a total of 44,000, being delivered to the 2 screws, the increase in displacement being responsible for the overall 4-knot loss of speed. However, a degree of armouring, at least against blast and splinters, was included along the machinery spaces, which would make the ships considerably more survivable, especially in the case of near misses. Although 4 ships were planned, only 2 ended up being built, the Öland and Uppland, both of which were laid down in 1943. Öland was launched at the end of 1945 and commissioned at the end of 1947, while her sister ship was launched almost a year later, but only commissioned about 2 months after the class lead in January 1948. As the post-World War II period turned into the Cold War, both ships would see a series of refits and modernizations. First, the addition of an anti-submarine rocket launcher aft, and then as the 1950s turned into the 1960s, the 20mm and 40mm guns were removed and replaced with 8 single new 40mm guns, each with its own dedicated radar guidance and fire control systems, with each mounting sat atop a fully stabilised gimbal. The depth charge throwers were also replaced with a more powerful Squid anti-submarine mortar system. Also, in the early 1960s, both ships would receive a new bridge superstructure, and there are some reports that Uppland was fitted with a helicopter landing deck, presumably in place of the torpedo launchers, although I haven't been able to confirm that this was actually done. However, in the 1970s, the Swedish government decided it was going to start retiring all of its pre-Cold War vessels in favour of new small fast attack missile boats, and so both ships would be sold for scrap in 1978, with their main legacy being setting the pattern for the newer Halland and Östergötland classes, which would be built along the same general lines, although considerably larger again, during the 1950s.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.